Hello and welcome to Pharma Television News Review here at Biopharm America in Boston. On this show, I have Bob Coughlin, who is CEO of the Massachusetts Biotechnology Council, otherwise known as MassBio. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Fintan. Thank you.
What is the function of MassBio?
Well, our mission statement is clear. The mission of MassBio is to create an environment in which all biopharma companies can achieve their utmost potential. Fairly general, when you think about the companies, and we represent well over 600 companies today, we represent the smallest of the small, the two-person biotech company that just recently raised a small round of finance, all the way to the biggest of the biopharms, and all of the large pharma companies are members of the trade association as well. So we need to provide services to help them succeed. The big companies, policy is very important. The smaller companies, very important that we help them with their business needs, their innovation services, their economic development, and their purchasing. So we try to do all of that for all of our member companies, and we also have a communication strategy to educate the public as to what the definition of biotechnology really is, why it's important to the economy, why it's important to the patient population.
Right. So, in other words, you're working on behalf of those organizations, obviously, but helping to create the environment. And a lot of that is the policy environment, yes, the political environment that allows innovation to get to the market, ultimately, and to overcome the disease states that are still out there.
Absolutely.
So, how do you do that? How does an organization like MassBio actually go out and change policy?
Well, the way we do it is by identifying stakeholders, finding out what their role should be, and then getting them to do it. It's like the three legs of the stool. If you look at where this industry came from here in Massachusetts, because folks from other countries and other parts of the country and many parts of the world will come here to find out how we did it. Well, this industry was invented from academia. Smart people at these world-renowned academic institutions and academic medical centers. We're home to 8 of the top 11 NIH-funded hospitals or research institutions in the country. So these smart people from the Harvard, MIT, working with folks at Mass General and Children's Hospital and UMass and Tufts, they would come up with these ideas. Then you introduce an extremely risky, bold venture capital community that was willing to take that risk and invest that capital to get these products all the way from the bench down to the bedside to the patient population. So now you look at it. You have one stool is academia. The other stool is this new industry that's created. And then the third leg of the stool is government, policy, regulatory authority, so to speak. In order to succeed, all three of those folks need to do what they need to do. Academia, keep putting out a world-class workforce. Industry, get together and identify what it is that you need for business and regulatory needs as well as a future workforce. And government has finally stepped up in Massachusetts to do their part to create an environment from a political standpoint so that these companies can succeed.
Right. So where does MassBio fit in relation to, for example, Bio, which is, US-wide? Are you working at advocacy level just at the state level, or also are you hitting Washington as well?
That's a great question, Fintan, and I have spent a great amount of my time down in Washington for the last 2 years because of the federal healthcare reform action that has been taking place, and we wanted to make sure that we educate our federal delegation, because this is really grassroots politics. It's important that the congressmen and the senators from Massachusetts understood not only how important this is to our local economy, but to the patient population. So we have a federal action plan, and we work on that diligently. We also have a state policy team that will work on the local state issues here in Massachusetts. They're responsible for implementing with Governor Deval Patrick the first Life Science Initiative, which is a $1 billion initiative here in Massachusetts to keep these companies moving down the path of success during this capital formation crisis. But yeah, it's where we fit into Bio. Bio is more of a Washington, D.C. based lobbying organization. We're more grassroots, and we like to bring the disease foundations in with us as well so that we can educate members of Congress that may not have a robust biotech industry in their district, because they certainly have a lot of sick people that live in their district.
Sure. And the other key thing here is the recent healthcare reform that's taken place here in the U.S. So what's your view on that? And is that the good compromise that it should have been, or how does it affect your members? How does that healthcare reform affect the members of MassBio?
Well, if healthcare reform was not done properly, biotechnology, not only in Massachusetts but in the country, could have gone out of business overnight. And that's tragic. It's not just tragic for industry and jobs. It's tragic for those who are experiencing unmet medical needs, illness around the world, because that's what this industry does. It creates cures, it creates tomorrows, it creates therapies that actually can drive down the cost of healthcare. A huge concern in federal healthcare reform was the issue around a reasonable pathway to biosimilars, also known as biogenerics. If our member companies did not get a reasonable period of data exclusivity, they own the rights to make that drug for X amount of time, this industry would go out of business because people would not be incentivized to invest in innovation. People don't realize it costs an average of $1 billion and takes 10 years to get a product from the bench all the way to the bedside and into a patient. That's a lot of investment dollars before you have something to sell.
Sure.
And it's important that we preserve that.
Right. And in that respect then, there is the regulatory issues. We talk about regulatory issues at the FDA level, and there's the regulatory issues that relate to venture capital and how companies or venture capital organizations that take on risk can continue to take on that risk. So are those areas that you talked about the Washington policy. Do you work at FDA level Washington policy as well?
Absolutely.
Looking at ways in which the FDA can be more realistic about how products can get actually registered.
Yeah, it's a great point. In fact, the biopharma industry, I think we might be the only industry that actually advocates and lobbies for more money and more resources for the federal regulatory agency that oversees us. And the reason that is because we would never want to compromise efficacy or safety, and the people at the FDA do good work. They just need to be able to do it more efficiently, quicker, and continue to do the good work. And if you can take that 10 years and $1 billion to invent a drug and drive it down to 5 years and $500 million, the cost to invent will be less, the cost to recoup the investment will be less, the cost of drugs will be less. You know, people will often say, well, drugs are too expensive. And I say, yeah, well, they're too expensive to invent. Let's get to the root of the problem, and then we can go help these sick people.
Right. So in the end, when it comes down to things like venture capital, and we've just gone through a tough period, clearly, with the economic crisis. That's not just here in the US, but worldwide. What needs to change there that will continue to attract the risk dollars that are required to go into that investment that you talked about?
We often say here in Massachusetts, you know, to use a sports analogy in baseball, you got to keep your eye on the ball. We need to keep our eye on innovation. If we continue to put out the best workforce, we will continue to have the brightest and best ideas. Good ideas, even during these very difficult times, have been continuing to get funded. And what we've also seen with the dip in Wall Street and the lack of IPOs, if you would, big pharma is taking their business development dollars and investing them into our member companies that are smaller to keep their own pipeline of future blockbuster therapies robust. And we've continued to experience growth, 43% in the last 9 years here locally. We've made it through the tough times, the tough financial economic climate, and we've done that through partnering events like you're at Biopharm America here in Boston. Today, MassBio is partnered with the EBD group to do that, and what we're doing is bringing buyers and sellers together.
Right. And when a local company like Genzyme is a potential target for takeover, is that a good thing for MassBio?
That has been the most popular question that I've received in the last several weeks. And I'm going to give you my most diplomatic response. When you look at the biotech industry, I mean, we're adolescent. We're growing up. We've been around for 25 years, and these large biotech companies, they have products that have gone to the market. They're now biopharma companies. You look at the big pharmaceutical industry, the traditional pharmaceutical industry, they're experiencing a roll-up on their own. That's natural in business. So I like to tell people that what's happening with large international pharma companies acquiring our homegrown large bio companies, it's natural. It makes sense. And for us, we've seen historically with companies like Takeda coming in and buying Millennium, it's only benefited the amount of innovation coming out of this area. The companies have increased their employment here. Sanofi Aventis announced just a few weeks back that they're making Boston their worldwide headquarters for oncology research. That's a good thing. Novartis, a few years back, put their worldwide research center here. So we're finding that when investments are made, if Shire acquired Transkaryotic Therapies, Seprecor was acquired as well, it's been a positive experience. So I would think that whatever direction Genzyme goes in, we wish them the best because they've really done heroic work for those experiencing rare genetic disorders.
Sure.
Who else would have done that?
Sure.
It's a beautiful thing.
And for you, Bob, personally, you're a very driven guy in this particular area. You're very well known for your passion for this. Where did you get that passion from?
My passion, it's from a personal experience. I have a beautiful 8-year-old son that has a disease called cystic fibrosis. It's an orphan disease. It's only 30,000 people in the country, in the United States, that suffer from it. It's a horrible disease. And many years back, I got involved to raise money for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and I became a volunteer patient advocate. When the time came for me to leave government and move on to the next challenge, I thought what better thing to do than to go work for an industry that cures diseases, not just cystic fibrosis, but every single known unmet medical need to mankind is being researched right in this area. And to be able to represent them and create a climate so that these smart people can succeed, I can't think of any better way to spend my time.
Sure. Now, when we go, Bob, into the future, we're looking at where we are today, the transformation that we've talked about, transformation of government policy, transformation of companies taking over biotech companies, the lull in capital investment in biotech, the lack of IPOs. A lot of things have happened in the last couple of years that's changed the landscape of biotechnology as we know it. What is the future? How do you see the future, Bob?
The future is bright. And I think you could be bold and say what's taken place over the last few years is a little economic Darwinism. Only the real good ideas are getting funded, and that's okay. I think as our success rate in getting products from the bench to the bedside, the failure rate is way too high. It's way too high. As we reduce that, you see big pharma companies becoming more efficient by investing in the nimble biotech companies to keep their pipeline robust. We're getting smarter on how we do business. Keep in mind, these are the smartest people in the world that are working at these companies, and they've figured out how to get funded and how to continue to morph, if you would, into a more efficient revenue model and business model.
Right. And the challenge for you from MassBio going forward, what's the big issue that you need to tackle now in order to help that? Time.
I'll walk into a lab and, for me, labs kind of all look the same. And you'll walk into a lab and you'll see these people working around the clock, and there'll be a sign on the wall with a sick child, and it'll say the patient is waiting. It takes too long to make these drugs. And,
so people, you want to see a reduction in time?
Yeah, without sacrificing safety and efficacy, because that's the last thing any of us would want to do. So, and also educating the public is our huge challenge. New therapies and innovation is part of the solution of the cost of healthcare, not the problem. Not the problem. Medicine and drugs only represents today 10% of the overall cost of healthcare. Hey, I know my son takes medicine that keeps him alive. When he takes the medicine and it keeps him healthy, it keeps him from needing a lung transplant at this time. That's less costly to keep him healthy. So when new drugs can keep people healthy and drive down the amount of the healthcare costs associated with hospitalizations, surgery, etc., that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Bob Coughlin, thank you very much indeed for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's truly a pleasure.